My first like real memory of who I am is I remember being like 4 and I was in nursery school and a teacher yelled at me or I got in trouble and I felt embarrassed. I felt uncomfortable. And I remember saying to myself as a 4-year-old, I'm never gonna feel embarrassed again, ever. I didn't like the way it felt. You know, like when Fred Flintstone used to get yelled at and he started shrinking, and I just was like, I'm never gonna put myself in a position to let any adult, teacher, whatever, I'm never gonna be embarrassed. I just hated that. I remember not liking that feeling. And I think that was the last time I felt it. Pause.
And how did that presumably impacts your relationship with authority figures?
It just means I don't care what anybody thinks. So no matter what, regardless to what, you're not gonna make me feel as less of who I am. I know who I am. So there was no way that teacher was gonna make me feel small just because they were a teacher and I was a student. There was no way that they were gonna make me feel less of myself. I was never gonna let another person make me feel bad about myself ever again. The last time that happened, I was 4 years old. But what I saw was, as I got older, that this is the way people live their life, fear what people think of them. And that's the reason why they don't say what they feel. That's the reason why they internalize. And that's the reason why they end up depressed. So as long as you're expressing yourself, as long as you don't care, as long as you're not hurting anybody, there's no pain to feel. It's almost like at that point I sprayed this thing called I don't give a fuck what anybody's thinking spray. And I think that's been the most important thing, is not to care about the judgment of other people.
What about your parents? Could they tell you what to do?
Well, of course as a child, but my mom died when I was 16, so I was still a child. So at that point, I was making money. You know, the last time anyone could tell me what to do would be the last time someone was paying my bills. So if you paying my bills, then you could tell me what to do. And I've never put myself in a situation like that as an adult for someone to be able to tell me what to do. They could give me advice. My parents could give me advice, but you know, at 16 or 17, after my mom died, I was getting more money than my dad. You know, so at that point, it's hard to listen to people that are older than you that haven't got to the place you want to go. And as a child, you become very arrogant when you can do adult things. But my mother was the one that taught me to never, ever, ever let someone tell you something that you don't believe without saying how you feel about it. And, you know, almost where it made it to where we might have had almost a somewhat disrespectful relationship, because I would talk back. But, you know, in school, I would talk back. If I didn't agree with you, I was letting you know. And I'd be like, my mother taught me that. You know what I mean? So I was basically taught to talk back.
You're a father now. When you look back
I've been a father.
Yeah. Yeah, I can
I
tell,
should be a grandfather. My newest child, you know, I had her when I'm 50. I'm 51.
5 kids.
Yeah, last time I counted.
When you look back on your own relationship with your parents and how, now that you're a father, you've got kids of your own, how in hindsight did that shape you? The dynamic between your parents, but also their relationship with you. Is there anything you look back and say, well, because of that, I became this?
Well, everything. I have a tattoo on my arm that says, "Thanks for making me the man I am." So yeah, I got my sense of humor from my father, and I got my hustle from my mother. Period. And yeah, you become a combination of the people that influence you the most. That's why you have to be important. I mean, it's important that you're cognizant of what you do when you realize that people are actually influenced by you. You know what I mean? You never want to do something that you don't want the people you love to do, because they're going to do exactly what you do. So I got a little bit of that. You know, my mom, she was like, you know, an entrepreneur. She always made sure I had everything. She sold things. You know what I mean? Not drugs, but like, you know, like clothes. You know what I mean? But like at flea markets and stuff. And she was real innovative about it. She did this thing once. We went to a flea market and she took a hula hoop and put a curtain on it. And we would stand up and it made into a dressing room. And that day she sold all of her jeans. She made $800 that day, I remember, at Aqueduct. So, you know, I've always had that hustle and bustle from my moms, and doing things different at an early age made me know that that's the only way you could do it right. Like standing in, like if you don't stand out, then you're just atmosphere in a crowd. But when you do things different, then people are drawn to you. Every mistake that I had to fix made me brilliant. Makes you a boss, because that's a boss's job, is to like untie knots. Your job as a parent is to make sure your children never have to go through the same problems that you went through. It's to break cycles. But first you kind of have to understand what that cycle is. So as an adult that had children, I was, I ain't gonna like shit on my dad, but if I were him, I would have been in my life a little more. And you can look at there's this thing like, if your father's an alcoholic, you could either become an alcoholic because of it or just never touch drinks. It depends on how things affect you. So, the way he parented and the way I knew and I was conscious about the way it made me feel, I knew what not to do to my children or what not to, be absent or when I should be consistent. The cycle that I wanted to break was that cycle where, your mother tells you not to like your father and your father's telling you certain things about your mother, and those are the people that you love the most. And the only thing you want as a child is for your parents to get together. That's all you want. So, it took me to have 5 kids to have a good relationship, a good, one that's not so traumatizing for the child, a functional relationship. It took me 5 to be 50 to get there. But each one of those children, the other 4 children, I knew that I was like, damn, I even though I've been able to make it where they've never had to sell drugs and they've had the best educations and lived that 1% of life, but I wasn't able to break that cycle. The thing that hurt me the most was the separation of my parents and the beef. I wasn't able to break that cycle. So, I wasn't gonna stop till I did. It's almost like with every child, I became a better parent. But knowing that the breakup of my mother and father affected my mother for the rest of her life, which affected me. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't want to ever do that to my children. And then also, being a visiting dad is whack. You want to wake up with your child. You want to watch your child grow and evolve. Buying and providing physical things, a kid doesn't even care about that. That's not currency to a kid. They don't even know about money until you tell them about it. All they care about is your time. And that's the most valuable thing is, the love that you can give your child. So, at some point you might think, okay, I'll sacrifice time with my child because I got to make money to support him. But the kid don't care about that. The kid just wants you to be there to support.
Did you learn about emotions and affection and how to express yourself from your parents? Was that something that you were able to do as a young man well?
Yeah, I wouldn't put a title on it like, oh, this is affection, but I've always been able to express myself in any way, whether I'm crying or whether I'm cuddling. I don't have any problems about being and showing what I feel in that moment, unless it's the police.
You're 16 years old when your mother passes away?
Yeah.
How does that change you? From everything I've read about that time in your life, she was everything. And I read that you'd said that was your biggest fear when you were a young man, was losing your mother.
Yeah. Yeah, it made me a beast. It made me fearless. It's like a gift and a curse of facing your nightmares early, because then you have nothing else to be scared of. So, when my mom's died, again, I didn't really care if I died because I'd be like, oh shit, I'd be with my mom's. So I had no fear of anything at that point. And I knew how I would react, because sometimes you don't know how you're gonna react in certain situations. So I knew how I could get over it, not get over it, but live with it. And also it makes you appreciate what a real problem is. Like after my mom's died, I was like, if nobody's dying, I don't really want to hear about it. It could be fixed. I'm not going to ever be unhappy unless it has something to do with health, death, or freedom. You know what I'm saying? But other than that, nothing's going to ever make me worry. Like, I'm not going to be, like, a lot of people overreact to problems because they never had any. They don't know what a problem is, and then they make something that's light feel like it's the worst thing in the world. And I'm not gonna ever do that because I appreciate when things are good. You know what I'm saying? It'd be like just in any second, some shit could happen that's fucked up. So in between those moments that you can't control, you have to enjoy life to the fullest, 100%. But sometimes you have to actually go through some pain early so you understand how to appreciate life moving forward.